6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Through Black and White Eyes. First of all, I apologise for the coughing. I don't know what I've got. I'll find out tomorrow when I go to the doctors. But apologies straight away because I struggled this morning. But I've got Dan. I did have Dan to help me. And we've got Stefan waiting as well. So evening all, welcome back to Stefan. Please adhere to standard community guidelines. Keep comments respectful and enjoy the show. Help the channel grow. Subscribe. You know the usual stuff. Tino on the bench tonight. Oh yeah, England are playing. I forgot about that. Evening, everyone. Evening, Mogul. Evening, Blade. Right, let's bring Dan in very quickly. How are we doing, Dan?
Good morning, good morning, good morning, or afternoon, good evening to you. How you feeling, Baz? I was up when the fixtures were released. I didn't join your watch along simply because I was unpresentable for you.
I do not want to hazard a guess.
No.
But we got the fixture released 10 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes before 9 o'clock. So I decided to jump on and discuss it, and it was right. 3 years running now. But there we go. Right. Cough is killing me. Right, let's bring Stefan in. I'm buzzing to have him on. Gaz, how you doing, mate? Tonight, by the way, the show, any donations you make and anything we make from the show will be going to cancer research. I promised Stefan a £50 donation at least. So we will be doing that for him. For this is the third time he's been on. Big fish and a small pond. You know, he does Talksport. He does everything. He's an absolute top bloke. He's never said no to us. And we can't thank him enough for coming back on. So let's get the man of the moment in. How are we doing, Stefan?
Yep, good. How does it sound? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Good.
Stefan,
Awesome.
Good to see you again. Thank you for coming on, sir. Always a pleasure.
Well, we'll see where the where the line of questioning goes and the level of abuse that flows afterwards.
There's never any abuse from us. We've defended you quite a lot, actually, to be fair, in our previous shows. I mean, there has been a lot of. Let's get the elephant out of the room. You've had a lot of abuse online from Newcastle fans, from people who probably don't actually understand PSR as well as obviously you do, and don't understand that you look through all the figures from public houses and everything that goes on with inside the club that you can see, and then you come up with your assumption of what PSR looks like for Newcastle United. So I apologise for the abuse you've been getting. It's not nice. And everyone needs to, this is the way I look at it. The club's not going to come out and say they've got PSR problems. Eddie Howe's not going to say the club's got PSR problems. They're never going to tell them exactly how much money we've got because, for a start, season ticket renewals, cup scheme renewals, membership renewals. If the club came out and said we've got problems, we might not be signed on in the window. Do you really think that we'd get the response of all, the response I've had on the cup schemes and memberships and stuff like that? So, there's obviously still some sort of issue there, Stefan, and I would love to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I think that's the important context, which is that I'm not saying that they're going to fail PSR. I mean, actually, I go further. I say nobody's going to fail PSR going forward. I say PSR is dead, right? So I think the Chelsea situation means that the whole thing's finished. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be a new regime around some form of financial fair play and some kind of restrictions. I think there will be. But I think in its current form, I would be very surprised if any team, when we come through to next January, aside from the Leicester situation, which is quite specific to them,
yes,
I'd be very surprised if any other team fails. But that's not to say that there aren't restrictions that flow from the situation that teams are in now, and that they will be in next season. And all I've tried to do is to look through really the messages that the teams themselves give, because the reality with the best one in the world, all the teams always say they're fine, right? Last year, when we sat down, I think that it was about a year ago.
It was, yeah.
I think the clubs were basically saying they were going to be fine. Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea, they were all saying they were going to be fine. But actions speak louder than words. And also in retrospect, we know that teams weren't fine as they sat there days before June the 30th.
Right.
And likewise with Wolves. I mean, Wolves, it's a minor point, but Wolves have just changed their financial year end in the way that Leicester did last season. And that's a very big signal that without that change, they may well have had an issue for PSR. So the context is important, but it is also important to say that my conclusion on the piece that preempted the kind of meltdown that people had literally said PSR 24-25, no issue. That was the heading of the whole story, right? And then what I went on to do, and I remember this article that created this stir and then had a follow on when I tweeted. I mean, it was an innocent comment, which I'll explain in a moment. But that piece, I mean, there's been a couple of pieces that I've done about Newcastle. I mean, the first one that I did in just after you won the Carabao actually said that the result that weekend was probably not the best result of that weekend, and actually went on to say, if you actually analyse the position that Newcastle are in from there to the end of the season, and the impact that I think on that same weekend Villa lost.
Yes.
So you'll remember the date better than me, but it was a very early call to say, actually, if you look at it, the best result of the weekend was the Villa result rather than winning Carabao, because it opened the whole thing up. You had great fixtures.
Didn't Forest lose as well that weekend as well?
Yeah, something like that. It was like a series.
It was like loads of results went our way, didn't there?
Results for everybody else, and the whole thing just opened up for you. And sure enough, I mean, it was a bit hairy at the end. Sure enough, you got there. But then the piece that I wrote in April was to say, look, there are certain contingencies here that might flow and impact PSR. And one of them, or two of them, are the bonuses for the Carabao and potential Champions League qualification. And what triggered me thinking that was, we know that the teams that are promoted, they have promotion bonuses of £20 million a pop broadly. And then there's a revelation that we discovered over the last few weeks, which is that actually those promotion bonuses, although they're payable within the current financial year that they get promoted, they don't count for PSR. So what they do is that they exclude them in the first season back in the Premier League, but add them back in years 2 and 3 if the team survives.
Right.
But of course, let's say Newcastle have, I don't think it will be as much as this, but let's say Newcastle had a £20 million bonus pot for Champions League qualification. They wouldn't have that benefit that the promoted clubs have. They would take the hit of £20 million in the current season. And so I was merely saying that you could have this perverse situation where, because of the success at the end of the season on the pitch, you have an impact on your current year's PSR because you're 20 million down, and all of the benefit from that qualification, all of it accrues in the next season.
Yeah. That was a question I was going to ask about when for Champions League qualification, is that obviously you get so much money for the amount of games you play in on TV, stuff like that. That money doesn't count for that this season, does it? It counts for the following season.
You get nothing. It's not like, so if you were to compare it, for example, to the Club World Cup that's going on right now, all of the clubs have got effectively a down payment upon qualification and the start of the tournament. That is going to be in the current financial year. And we know that we don't know the exact number for every team, but we know the range for the European clubs. and the European and effectively City are going to do the best part of $50 million just in this financial year. And then you go down, and Inter are going to do 25, and everybody else is kind of in the middle. City and Real are basically the top of that list. But the point is, it's not. There's nothing. You get literally zero, aside from the fact that you're going to get the merit payment from finishing 5th, rather than finishing, outside those places. So that's going to be a very big merit payment. Shouldn't be ignored, but is not the same as the revenue that's going to accrue in the next financial year, and that's obviously going to make a big difference to your PSR calculation for next season. Not for this season. You can have a situation where you have a lot of the cost of those bonuses going in this current season. Now, there is a wrinkle to that, and I'll stop talking in a moment, but there is a wrinkle, which is that some of the clubs structure those payments such that they're actually only payable on a condition, and that condition being that the player is still playing for the club, for example, on the 1st of August, or in the first match team squad, match day squad for the Champions League game, or something like that. But clearly, most players that are in the squad for this season, that have just qualified for the Champions League, most players will say, hang on a minute, I'm not taking any bonus that means that I've got to be at the club next season. If I'm a French player, for example, where I may not be at the club, I want my bonus. I've just been part of the team that's qualified for the Champions League. I want that bonus, and I don't want it to be conditional on being paid in the next financial year. So, but I do know for a fact that some of the clubs will structure it in that way to effectively move the contractual obligation from the current season to the season in which they're actually going to get the revenue from the Champions League.
Because I know Newcastle will be hindered quite a bit for winning the Carabao Cup. It all depends on how many players are still on the same contract they had when Mike Ashley was in charge, because he was very clever in the way he negotiated contracts with players. He put in very high bonuses for lower wages. So if anyone's still on one of those contracts, they probably got a hefty bonus for winning a cup. And I think he put a hefty one in for qualifying for Champions League, because he knew deep down that club was never going to win anything while he was there. And that's why he put those bonuses in.
I mean, I suspect the bonuses are meaningful this season for both Carabao and for the Champions League. For a slightly different reason to the Mike Ashley reason, but more because they see it as so integral to the development of the club. For the club, first of all, to have won really anything, but also going forward to be in the Champions League. And so I think they probably would have doubled down on very big bonuses. The only question is then how are they structured, and how much buffer did they give themselves when they looked at the situation in January and said, we're not signing anybody and we're selling, a couple. But, the biggest indicator, I would always go back to this, the biggest indicator that whatever people want to say, that they'll come to the year tight to the 105 limit. And the biggest indicator is that they didn't buy anybody in January, because the reality is they probably, in an ideal world, would have wanted to have done some business in January. I agree with that. Given everything that was going on in that second half of the season, given the opportunity that they had in the Champions League, they will have definitely preferred to have done a deal, brought in one player, let's say, just to improve those odds, just that slight bit more. And they didn't. And that was an indicator that they didn't want to be scrambling around in June, looking to do what they did last season. And so, that's why I think, and someone's just mentioned it, I think that's why, again, reluctantly, and they've said this themselves, reluctantly, they sold Kelly.
I think that was a great bit of business, to be fair, from fans' point of view, wasn't it?
I mean, look, of course, you get a player for zero, you sell him for 15 million pounds.
I think it was his performances. I think we were like, as fans.
It's a no-brainer. So, but I don't think the manager necessarily would have taken that view. Right? I think if it was if they had more leeway, I think the manager would have said, well, I want him for what's coming up. We've got a big second half of the season.
Yeah, true. I think, we think as fans terrible. So but Eddie Howe would be thinking.
But he said himself, maybe he's being nice to the guy, but Eddie Howe said himself he sold him for PSR reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's gone to Juventus, right? I mean, he's not exactly gone to the local pub team. I mean,
right. No, and you're not selling him to a rival. You're not selling him to anybody in that's in a promotion capability in the championship. You sold him to a European team, so you're not losing anything other than the possibility that you may face him in a European competition.
Yeah, or that he's really really good and worth much more than 17.5 million quid or 15 million quid.
I was thinking about what you said earlier, Baz, about players that are still on Ashley contracts, and the only two I can think of that fit into that category are Joe Willock and Jacob Murphy.
Yes.
I think on top of that, you've got to remember they're also going to have a squad pool bonus as well. Beyond,
absolutely.
Beyond that.
But anybody else who was from that era has either signed a restructured contract.
I think you're right.
Cher, Lascelles, Wilson's is just finished. I'm Joe Linton. I'm looking at players that Kraft that came in during that era who have stayed on. The vast majority of them have renegotiated contracts. So which is why when Stefan says that if you're getting a bonus for qualifying for the Champions League, but that bonus isn't payable until next season, the season after you've competed in the competition. The likes of a Joe Willock are sitting going, look, I was in the squad that got into the Champions League. I deserve that bonus. I don't want to hang on until next season. And if he is truly a fringe player that could be sold this summer in order to make some money, to bring in some money into the war chest, he's going to want that bonus because he provided that service, or he participated in that season to get it before he exits. I mean, that might be one of the negotiating factors upon being sold to another club is saying, look, I'll go to that club. If you want to sell me, you can sell me, but you've got to give me my bonus before I leave.
And I think this is a valid point, and it kind of does suggest that if there was any issues with these sorts of bonuses in a club that's tight on PSR, that they would have a condition that moves it into the following financial year. Because what you would do is you could make the condition could simply be that you will be a registered Newcastle United player on the 1st of July of the relevant year, in which case the squad list on the 1st of July get the bonus. And then if there's a player who actually you want to ship out before the 30th of June, for whatever reason, then what you would do is, as part of the settlement agreement around that deal, so as part of the payments that are made to either buy the player out of his contract or as part of the transfer, you'd make him whole. Because the player's going to say, the agent's going to say, well, I'm not going anywhere until the 1st of July. I know it works for you for me to go on the 30th. But I've got £1 million that I'm due to be paid on the 1st of July. So if you want me to go on the 30th, obviously you're going to have to pay me everything I'm owed on as if it was the 1st of July. So you can get round it with those sorts of negotiations. And that may be what they've done. And it may be, I think that was kind of the hint in that reply that, what's it called? Newcastle, some publication went to the club and asked them about my comments. And the club said, well, you don't know when we pay our bonuses. Which is true. And I never said that I did know. But that does sort of hint that maybe what they're saying is that it all goes into next season, which obviously is good from a PSR perspective for now. But it kind of does suggest that they're quite close on current season. Otherwise, you wouldn't move it out to next season, because next season is then
you'll be in the hampered again, aren't you?
Correct, because it's then going to have this extra chunk of cost rather than being a super profitable season. So look, it's all obviously none of this comes across very well when you try and discuss it and describe it on Twitter, which is why people get all
Yes.
very annoyed. Similarly with the other thing that Newcastle fans seem to get irate about, which was my breakdown of the wage bill. Again, a misunderstood conversation, but something else that turned into a fair amount of blocking and muting.
Fair.
Brilliant. You're making me laugh. You make me cough. Right. This is a bit of a... Right. I'm sure you said this or you wrote it somewhere on Twitter, but there was something to do with the way the World Club Cup came about, that anybody signed before July would still count towards next season or after July's PSR situation. Is that right or wrong?
No, I didn't mean that. So
Right, okay.
It's nothing to do with Club World Cup. It's just about the way the maths work and the way amortization and wages work. So let's say Newcastle are very close on PSR for this season. Yeah. Okay. So for 24-25, the year that's going to end at the end of this month. And they effectively are saying, look, we're really, we've got very little leeway. We can't spend, we couldn't buy in January. We're really close to the limit. We're going to shoot at around 100 million versus the 105 after you take all the allowances. Well, it doesn't really say anything about the situation if you go and buy a player. Because if you buy a player, even if it's a £60 million player on a 5-year contract, okay, let's take that example. So a 60 million player on a 5-year contract is a £12 million a year amortization charge. Yep. So £1 million a month. So your worst case scenario, even if you sign him on the 1st of June, is going to be £1 million of amortization in the current financial year. It's basically irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant. Yeah. Likewise, the wages for that 1 month from the 1st of June, and by the way, they haven't signed anybody, and we're on the 18th, right? So if they sign someone tomorrow, they've got 10 days of the amortization and 10 days of the wage cost. It's irrelevant. So buying players doesn't indicate anything. What indicates you've got a situation is selling players, because when you sell a player, you crystallize on the sale. You crystallize the accounting. The profit for PSR purposes is crystallized upon the sale. So if you sell a player at 11 p.m. on the 30th of June, that counts in this current financial year in full. So if you make a £50 million profit on that player, that's 50 million in this season, which is exactly what you did last year. Not 50 million, but it's exactly what you did last year with Minter, for example.
Yeah. Well, Anderson and Minter, wasn't it?
Right. So all of the profit for Minter went into last year because you sold him just before the deadline.
Yeah.
Any player you buy in June is largely irrelevant from a PSR perspective for the current season, because all of the cost is forward amortization cost and forward wage cost.
That makes much more sense. Because the way I was the way I worded it in my head was anything bought in June doesn't go on to June; it starts the following month. But it kind of does, because
it does,
the way
you're talking about if you look at a player on a 5-year contract, you're talking about 1/60th of the total cost of that player.
Yeah,
right. Because he's there for 60. He's there for 60 months.
60 months. Yep.
Right, and you'd amortize it over 60 pieces. But you're only hit if you'd sign him on the 1st of June, is the whole of the June month, which is 1/60th of the entire transaction cost.
Yeah.
It's just irrelevant when it's a 60th of it.
Yeah. So basically, if we're close to the line, we're not over it, we're better off waiting until the 1st of July to let anyone go, because then we've got a whole year's profit on that player from the 1st of July.
Correct. So if you're fine, which I think they're there or thereabouts, right? They will sell any player now, not before 30th of June. Yeah. They'll want the sale into the next financial year.
Yeah. Right.
Because it also gives you when on the rolling period, there's no point in inflating 24-25 because when we get to, depending on what happens with the system, what PSR or whatever the system comes in, that 3-year rolling total might still be important. So what you want to do is get as close to the 105 in 24-25. Don't want, if you don't want to basically sell a player and have a massive have a massive excess, because you're better off keeping that for next season.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I believe for this one, I'm sure you can't sue the Premier League, because I'm sure it's within the contract of the clubs that they can't take the Premier League to court, can they?
Well, you can't go to court. I think the question is, could a club take the Premier League to arbitration for restraint of trade? Probably. You can forget courts, right? So the clubs agree what's known as arbitration, which is effectively any disputes like the associated party transaction dispute. Any of those disputes be dealt with by their own processes, commercial arbitration under English law. So it's like a court, but it's not in the courts. Now, somebody could take the Premier League to arbitration about restraint of trade. They would almost certainly lose. And I suspect that's why nobody's ever done it.
No, done it. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the PSR window is a breakdown over a 3-year period. Does that mean this is the first year we don't have Mike Ashley's issues on the books? I think we're already past that, aren't we?
I can't remember what the dates are. I mean, you've got, so that the years that will be in the current equation will be 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. And I can't remember. It wasn't Ashley part of 22-23?
No, our takeover was finalized on October 21.
21. Yeah.
So we're well past that stage.
22. So it is. The question is right. This is the first year of no Mike Ashley.
Oh right, yeah.
Aspect.
Yep.
Because last year there was a stub period from the end of June until the takeover date.
Yep.
So this is the first year, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously that means our book should look a hell of a lot better when it comes to sponsorships and things like that.
To say income.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, but of course you've spent in the post Ashley period.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Amanda. We would still love her back though.
So, Baz, I'm going to step on the potential.
Yeah, go for it.
No. No, we're getting lots of questions in the comments, and it was something that we talked about the other day. The question has become, people are getting nervous because they're seeing Man City do a bunch of business. They're seeing Liverpool do a bunch of business. They're seeing other clubs doing a bunch of business in June, but it's all signs for us, for Newcastle, indicate that we're not going to do any business until after June 30th.
I don't think it's about June 30th because of the reasons I've just explained. I doubt you're so tight that a 60th of the transfer fee plus the wages is going to be determinative.
Right.
I think the reality is that they're not doing business right now for two reasons. One, they genuinely do believe that the prices they're quoted are quite high, right or wrong. And secondly, because unfortunately, under the PSR system that they have, to the extent that they're not prepared to do an internal transfer of the women's team, then they're probably going to be quite tight next season as well. And when I say tight, I don't mean they won't spend anything. I just mean when you add on what they're probably going to spend to the position that they're going in on, i.e. the starting position. So the 2 years that will be banked by the time we get into the assessment of the coming season, they won't have that much leeway, right? So if you're a club that's constantly buffering up against 105, then the season after, you're still not going to have loads of capacity. It doesn't instantly change.
Yeah, it doesn't
disappear, does it? Quite restrained. So I think they'll spend, 100, 150 million headline, probably something like that. They'll have to add some wage cost, absolutely inevitable. They'll have a much better return in terms of revenue this time versus when they were in the Champions League last time, more than double, right? Because put to one side all the Adidas and all that stuff, the competition has changed so materially, even in that 2-year period, that the money is now double. Because and the reason that it's double is because the way it works, when we saw it in practice this season, you almost guaranteed 5 games.
Yeah.
Home games, right? And
Yeah.
10 games in total. You've got the 4 games. You're going to finish in the top 24, right? So you're going to have at least a playoff. So you're going to have the 5th home game as well. So you have 5 home games minimum. You might get a round of 16. You might get a quarterfinal. But the chance of going out after 4 games or finishing really, really low down in the table, so you're getting no money, not no money, but you're getting a low level of money, is very, very low for Newcastle. You know, they're almost certain to finish kind of top 16. And we know that if you finish top 16, by the time you add on the gate receipts for those 5 games, you're going to do at least double what you did last year.
Oh, wow.
So, not last year, you know, the last time you were in
the last time the Champions League.
Which actually was slightly disappointing, really, you know, because you only had the 3 games, you went out and only generated, their number themselves in the accounts was 30 million quid. Now, there will have been something on match day as well. Yeah. But, you know, 30 million is probably not as much as they imagined they were going to generate.
No. So if you're saying double, we're looking maybe between double and treble, maybe.
You'll do 60 or 70 if you get, even if you don't get beyond the playoff. Still think you'll do about 60.
Wow. So you hear that, fans, get out to the stack and drink as much as you can on a Saturday and a Wednesday or Tuesday night, depending on when the games are. Let's push that PSR boundary.
Exactly.
So spread the costs.
By the way, I think the stack is largely irrelevant.
Yeah. A lot of people say it's making us about £1 million a week.
Yeah, I don't think so. The reason I don't think so is because of, first of all, how it's, who owns it and how the, and you got to remember that the stuff they're selling is low margin. So I'd be very, very surprised if it's anywhere near, you know, sort of 25 to 50 million quid a season revenue. Just don't see that being very likely. I mean, let's see when we see the numbers, but extremely unlikely. And actually, in some ways, you know, there's a cannibalization there of revenue that's being spent within the ground. So, you know, you just got to be slightly careful about whether actually net it's good for Newcastle, because there's a partner there.
Yes, there is.
There might be a partner in the ground as well. I don't know what the situation is with the stadium catering, but you know, we know definitely in the stack, you know, there's a partner and there's independent vendors, and you know, most of the revenue, there might be big gross revenue, but how much of that is coming to the club and how much is hitting the bottom line, it won't be as much as people are suggesting.
Be interesting to see the numbers for that. Before we move on to the next bit, very quickly, we've got obviously a big charity game going on the 3rd of August. Please come down to Newcastle Benfield for that. I've started a raffle, an online raffle, and these are the prizes, amazing prizes up for grabs. £1 a ticket. You've just got to contact me. There's a picture of some of the prizes. The Lewis Miley top's missing because I haven't got it back yet. It is with somebody who knows the family who's going to get it signed for me and send it back, and that'll be added to the raffle. So those prizes are amazing. So please contact me for any tickets, and please do drop a super chat tonight, because all the money's going to cancer research, as what Stefan asked me to do, which is really, really, it's a great charity, isn't it, at the end of the day? So we would love to put as much money as we can in. And apparently England are getting battered off Germany again. But it finished 5-5, didn't it, the under-19s game? Chronicle Live understands that the stack has clocked up profits of around 400,000 in the week leading up to Christmas alone, with numbers of 1.5 million potentially going into the coffers this month. That'll be, again, we need to see the actual numbers itself, won't we? From
you got to separate, and look, you got to separate profits from revenue, and you got to separate profits to who, right? The stack. I can't remember the company that owns the actual I mean, you'll know better than me, but I did look at this a while ago. So Stack Leisure are the owner of the Leisure Hub, right? Not Newcastle United. Stack Leisure is an independent company with a number of similar stacks in different places. Not So if you have a look at their own website, where is it?
We spoke to the owner, didn't we, Dan? In the Strawberry, he was hammered, but can you remember when you were over the first time?
Yeah, I do, but yeah.
He didn't tell us much about the profit, though, did he? Unfortunately,
No.
Look, the fact you spoke to the owner tells you everything you need to know, right? Yeah. So if you go on stackleisure.com, you've got Stack Seaburn, Stack Lincoln, St James's Stack, Middlesbrough Stack, Bishop Auckland Stack, Carlisle Stack, Durham Stack, Whitley Bay Stack, Northampton Stack, Sheffield Stack, Wigan Stack, right? The guy, etc., right? The guy has created a business that's similar to Box Park in Wembley, and effectively he's the landlord and operator of a leisure business. Okay, and Newcastle have one of those. There is a sponsorship deal with Seller. Clearly, there's going to be a different arrangement with the St James's Stack versus the Newcastle Stack and the Wigan Stack and all of these ones. I get that, but you have to be realistic about the product that's being sold and the costs of the operation, and the fact that the owner that you spoke to when you're having a drink wants to make his turn as well,
right,
on the whole thing. So I'm just a bit skeptical as to some of the numbers that we've heard. And in any event, we have to separate profit from revenue.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Right, I did listen again to the first time I've listened to it to try and get it all to sink in. Your conversation with regards to PSR being dead, or you think it's going to be dead. It was very interesting. Talk to Simon on Talksport. Is the reason why you think it's not dead is because Chelsea have found a loophole which has kind of made a mockery of the whole system, obviously selling the women's team to themselves and getting away with it? Is that one of the main reasons why we Newcastle should look down that route, or
there's two parts to it. The first one is yes. So if you get in a situation where you effectively allow a club to go at least against the spirit of PSR in a scenario where there are rules in the Premier League handbook that would, if they wanted to have got quite aggressive, potentially interfered with some of those transactions. Okay. Now, clearly, they could also, in June of last year, change the rules, and the clubs chose not to. Okay. Right. You put those two together, and then you add on that actually Chelsea have managed to get a revenue multiple on the women's team of, let's say, 18 times. Okay, now business is just in terms of how do you value a business, it's an art, not a science. And football clubs are often valued in sort of any way that you can, which is effectively looking at revenue, because there are no profits. So you might go up the profit and loss account and try and find, EBITDA and say, well, what multiple of EBITDA have the club got to try and base some multiple. But for the women's team, first of all, they've all got intercompany kind of sponsorship deals. So a lot of the revenue isn't even their own revenue. The only thing you know about is the cost, right? So you know about the player cost, and we see that. But they all lose money, right? So, and then on top of that, none of them have got really even major revenues. So what really is a buyer of Chelsea buying? I say, if you buy Chelsea women's team for 200 million quid, and that valuation is supported by the fact that they got a third party, Serena Williams' husband, to put, say, 10 million quid in for 8%, broad brush. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it effectively validated a valuation over 200 million quid. Okay. Now, if you've got somebody that's prepared to put that money in and validate the valuation, then that's it. The valuation discussion's gone The Premier League will approve it. They have to approve it because Chelsea are going to come along and say, well, look, our auditor said it was fair value. We've got a piece of paper here from a top investment bank that says it's worth 200 million. And we've also got a third party that bought a minority stake in it, arm's length, bought a minority stake and valued it at 250 million quid. So you have to approve it. So if we're now in a world, if we're now in a world where a Premier League football club's women's team is worth 250 million quid, then all of them are worth at least 100, regardless of what the history is, because you're buying future hope value in where the women's game is going. So I say now that is effectively a ripcord for any club that's on the edge of PSR. If they get a really serious problem, they pull the ripcord, they sell part of it internally, valuing it at, whatever, 100 million, and generate some profits like that. And if that's what Chelsea have been permitted to do, then sure, everybody can do it. Why not? I mean, who is going to stop other teams doing it? And you'll see in the next few days, right? The point that I made on Talksport is you've got a choice. If you're Villa and you're short on PSR coming up to the 30th of June, you've got a choice. You can either sell Jacob Ramsey or, I don't know,
Morgan Rogers. Martinez was linked away, wasn't he?
It's extreme to sell Morgan Rogers, but let's say you decided that's what you're going to do, or you can do an internal transfer of your women's team. You're obviously just going to do the women's team. Yeah. And if everybody can do that, if every Premier League team with the women's team has got at least £100 million of additional capacity, if they choose to do it, then PSR is dead.
Yeah. It'd be mad if we don't do it, honestly. The more you think about it...
We don't need to do it, so they won't do it. Right? So the point is, the teams that don't need to do it won't do it, because actually you've now got this perverse situation where if Chelsea are right about where the women's game is going to be in 25 years' time, they've moved the women's team outside of the men's club. So now all of the benefit goes to the private equity owners and not to the men's club, despite the fact that all of the investment has been made by the men's club over time, all of the leverage of the intellectual properties off the men's club, all of the sponsorship deals historically have been via the men's club, etc., etc., etc. Right? So what would interestingly and bizarrely happen is that if Chelsea are right, the Chelsea men's are kind of the biggest loser out of all of this, because all of the benefit is going to go off to a separate bunch of investors.
Is the women's team really going to bring in that kind of money in the future? I don't know.
Look, so I think no, but it doesn't matter what we think, right?
It's an investment at this point.
Yeah.
The truth, and you can't argue with this truth, is that there are a bunch of investors out there, particularly in North America, who do believe that the women's game will be very, very considerably bigger than it is today, and that there is a land grab, and that now is the time to do it. And effectively, they do believe, and I don't doubt for 1 minute that Serena's Williams' husband genuinely believes that he's made a fabulous investment, despite the fact that we all might say he's completely bonkers, right? And I would never. I think it's completely bonkers, but it's not the point.
Yeah.
There is a market. He's not the only one. And that is now a validated valuation. So we'll see. We won't know for 20 years, really, whether they're right.
Yeah.
There's some comment.
It's a long game, isn't it?
But let me answer that. It is, but it's off a very low base. So
yes. Yeah, I get that. Interesting. Very interesting. There's obviously PSR in the Premier League, but then also UEFA have their own rules, which are a lot tighter than the English PSR rules. I think it's something like 10% difference. Is that right?
No. I mean, it's simple. There's a lot of misunderstanding about those rules. They're quite different. So the UEFA rules, I won't go into great detail because we're not that much longer, but you have to understand the UEFA rules effectively have multiple levels of, and actually there is a Substack that I did on this, which don't know, people dig out my Substack. there is one where I broke it down, and particularly in terms of Chelsea and Villa being prepared to breach. But effectively, there's 3 different tests within the UEFA rules. One of them you don't need to worry about, which is like that you pay your bills as they become due, effectively, which they do. All the teams do anyway, because if you don't, you're in trouble with FIFA. In fact, the only team that hasn't is actually the Crystal Palace owner that owns Botafogo. He's got a problem with Burnley at the moment because he's not played for one of the players. Anyway, you've got that rule, and then you've got 2 other rules. You've got the squad cost control rule, which everybody talks about, right? Now, that squad cost control is effectively a percentage of your wages versus your revenue, but it's not as simple as that. There's all sorts of wrinkles around the calculation, including how much money you made on player trading profits, etc., etc. So again, that's not as simple as just take your revenue, what percentage have you got, and that's what you're allowed to spend. It's a more complicated test. I mean, if you want to just understand how it breaks down, you take total wages at the top. In terms of how we would analyze it, we take total wages and make an assumption, but the clubs will have to submit their players and head coach wages. They'll then also have to add on player amortization for that season. That gives you a total costs. Then you have a look at the total revenue plus the player trading profit over the last 3 years, the best year. So either an average or the best year. So if you manage to sell £100 million in one particular season, you'd add the 100 million to your revenue, and then so that would be at the bottom of the equation. You'd have your total costs. So, for example, using Newcastle's numbers broadly, for 23-24, on the squad cost control, Newcastle would have had about 275 million of total cost. And at the bottom of total revenue and profit on player sales, it would have been about 390. So around about 70%.
Right.
Okay. So that's squad cost control. Then on top of that, there's a system that looks a lot like PSR called financial sustainability, which is another UEFA check.
Yeah.
And you're right that has a different break-even level, not 105, but up to 90. Okay. For the season, for 24-25. It was 60 for last season because they were only looking at one test year. But for this season, it's going to be 90, I think. Not 60, 90. Now, the problem with that, for Newcastle, you're going to wish you hadn't got into this. In the back of the Newcastle accounts, okay? In the back of the Newcastle accounts, they have this section called Annex G. Now, that says that Newcastle, because of some of the dealings that they did to related parties, i.e. to Saudi Arabia, and in terms of some of the sponsorship in from Saudi Arabia, and in terms of the player swaps with Nottingham Forest, because of all of those things, they have to adjust the numbers I've just given you in terms of revenue and profit. They have to adjust them.
All right.
Because some of those profits, for example, the profit on the guy that went to Forest,
Anderson,
that profit is effectively wiped out.
Wow.
Under UEFA's rules. Okay.
That's harsh.
So look,
because we didn't want to sell him.
Well, there's a flip side of it as well. Yeah. They made a decision they had to sell him for PSR 23-24. But there's another sting in that tail, which is you've also taken on the cost of the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's not cheap. The goalkeeper is on your books came on your books at something like 20 million quid.
Yeah.
So we know that part of the deal was that they effectively inflated the price of the goalkeeper But that means, of course, every year for the next, let's say he's on a 4-year contract, every year for the next 4 years, you've got the £5 million of amortization cost, plus you've got your wages. So actually a very expensive deal, but you needed to do it for the PSR reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is that the UEFA rules are quite complicated compared to the PSR rules. You're probably going to breach UEFA rules. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Because of these adjustments that are made, I think you're going to breach. Now, clearly, it didn't matter. And by the way, there's another wrinkle as well, which is squad cost control is not looked at for June 30th to June 30th. It's looked at for the calendar year.
Oh, I love that.
So it actually makes back of a fag packet analysis even more difficult because you don't have the numbers. We have got the numbers, or we will have the numbers for 30th of June, but nobody's going to have the numbers for 31st of December. So everybody's going to have to make assumptions in terms of where they are. But in any event, the other part of the test, the one that looks like PSR, that nobody ever talks about in the UEFA rules, with this 60 or 90 million euro cap, is the one that I think you're probably going to fail. I do go into this a little bit more, as I say, in a Substack, where I look at Chelsea and Villa, because they were, of course, you didn't have this problem this season because you weren't in Europe. You're not in Europe, they don't test you.
Yeah.
But of course, Chelsea and Villa were in Europe, were tested, and apparently have failed. And any day now, as we understand it from the Times, any day now we'll find out what the penalties are. Now, the good news is that UEFA appear to have given up the pursuit of financial fair play in a serious manner and are now just fining teams.
Yeah, because Barcelona got fined, didn't they?
There's loads. Barcelona got €500,000 fine.
Nothing
for
in it.
267 million euro that was deliberate.
So there's a benchmark, isn't there? It's just like, well, if they've gone 260 million over,
PSG got a bigger fine. There's a number of teams that are currently in. It's called the settlement regime. You effectively agree to limit your losses for the next 3 seasons.
Right. Barcelona are going to keep breaking that. They can't even sign players on, can they? With their
Well, they are. They've just signed the goalkeeper from Espanyol, and they're just about to sign Nico Williams. But nobody can explain to me how they're able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the players aren't even getting registered onto the squad, though, are they? Because they have structure.
Yeah, they've got all sorts of disputes
because it's Barcelona, and they're allowed to do that because it's one of the biggest teams in the world.
They really are, and this is what makes it's not that much of a big deal as we sit here, but that's what makes such a mockery of the Crystal Palace situation. Yes. Because whatever you want to say, UEFA have fallen over themselves to allow PSG, Barcelona, and a number of, and you'd probably say City as well, ultimately, to be able to breach without serious penalty. And yet you've got Crystal Palace, who look like I think they'll be okay, but we'll have to see. But maybe caught by a little, gate issue, which would just be ridiculous. In the grand scheme of things, it would just be completely ridiculous.
It would make a mockery of it. Yeah, absolutely.
It would. Obviously, I've read through a lot of stuff. Who is the team in the Premier League that is most likely going to fail? Is that Villa or Bournemouth or Forest? Or Chelsea?
No, Forest will be fine because they had a very big load of sales. Chelsea will be fine because they sold the women's team. Although, interesting one on Chelsea, I'm not saying that they're going to fail because, first of all, they'll just sell something else. They'll find something else. They will. They just will. I mean, I'm not actually joking anymore. They just will. And so they should. Good for them. The league have allowed them to do it. So fine. Yeah. But they will have another issue. I mean, they've got a load of issues anyway because the club's losing over £200 million a year at the moment.
Wow.
Right. And on an operating level. And they've got, if you look at the list of players that are coming back to them this season that they want to sell, They've got Chilwell, Sterling, and Cuckoo, and about 10 others, right? Felix. And these players are on serious money. Okay?
Mudryk just been done as well, hasn't he?
Say that again.
Mudryk's just been done as well, hasn't he? For
that's the
doping.
one I was going to mention. So what's going to happen in all likelihood is Mudryk needs to be impaired, which is an accounting term, but effectively what it does is writes off his book value.
Oh, really?
Right. It writes him off, probably completely, but at least some of it, because he's no longer worth what he's worth on the books. On the books, he might be worth, let's say, £50 million, right? In the conventional, you buy him for whatever price, you amortize the price down, and then each month he's worth a bit less. So, but when you have a situation where the player, let's say, can't play again, so if he had a serious injury or he's banned, then you have to impair the player. Yeah. Right. And if you impair the player, you take the hit of the impairment immediately. So arguably, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but arguably they have to impair Mudryk in this current year for perhaps 40 million quid. Now, if they did have to impair him immediately for 40 million quid, that would be a hit against PSR for 40 million quid.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden their PSR position got worse overnight by 40 million quid in the current season.
Yeah.
Now we don't know if that's happened or going to happen, but it's a potential wrinkle with a situation like that. Now, look, to cut to the chase on your question, Leicester, I think, will fail, but let's put Leicester to one side because it's a more complicated situation.
Yeah.
Aston Villa, I think, will do something in the next 2 weeks. Either they'll sell the women's team or sell a part of the women's team, or they will sell a player, I think.
For a mega deal.
Well, for a good level of profit. Let's say
Ramsey, I think,
let's say 20 million plus, right? Yeah. I don't know who the player will be. I don't know. It might be two players. It might be two young players for 10 million quid. We know loads of teams, Newcastle included, sold a load of players at the deadline last season. And if you looked at the total number, I mean, I think what was unusual about Newcastle's sales is those players actually played for the teams that bought them. If you look at how many games, and this will blow your mind, Douglas Luiz went to Juventus in a deal with two players coming the other way, and I think 50 million euros. And it's all public because Juve have to publish what the details are of the contract. Douglas Luiz didn't start a league game the whole season, not one.
Right.
The two players that they got on loan, one I think had two loans, and the other one didn't play a single game. Similarly, the player that went to Chelsea for 18 million, zero games. So I think they'll find somebody that they can do some transactions with if they have to, if they can't sell the women's team. So I don't think they'll fail. And then beyond that, I don't think anybody will fail. Bournemouth won't fail because they were allowed, for reasons that are still not completely apparent, they were allowed a special dispensation to...
But like Man United with COVID.
in relation to £70 million loan write-off.
Wow.
Again, these situations that are sort of just, come out.
Rolled under the carpet, sort of thing, swept under the carpet.
It completely undermines the whole system, which is why, again, I say PSR is dead. It's ridiculous that some teams had to scramble around to sell players on the deadline, and other teams somehow got 70 million allowances.
Yeah, makes you wonder, doesn't it? Now, have you got one? Sorry,
in fairness, I mean, just in fairness to everybody, you could hardly say that it was because Bournemouth are a big team. It's the opposite. So at least in the analysis, the Premier League were not looking at the size of the club. They were they obviously genuinely believed that was a permissible allowance in the calculation. I just think that it's very hard for anybody in the outside world to look at that and go, "Oh yeah, that looks fair."
Yeah. It doesn't look fishy at all.
No. And they sold Houston to Real Madrid as well, which obviously that's going to help.
Yeah, they've got
as
no
well.
issues.
That's
They've
gonna
got no
help.
issue.
Yeah.
You know, then and they could sell another player if they needed to in the next 2 weeks. They've got interest for 2 other players.
Yeah.
So and they've got Kirkes as well as going. So
Yes.
they've got, forget Bournemouth. You can forget Nottingham Forest. I don't think Nottingham Forest have got a problem either. I don't think anyone's got a problem except for Aston Villa, really.
Yeah. It's just how close
But
other
Villa's
teams are to the line to what business they can do going forward. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they'll be restrained next season because the wage bill, they've deliberately gone quite high on wage bill. Obviously, a lot of that cost is going to come off because, one, they're not going to be in the Champions League, and 2, they did sign a number of players in January to try and get them over the line, and it didn't work. But those players obviously come to the end of their contracts. Alonso and Asensio and Rashford.
Rashford, yeah.
And the guy from Chelsea, Desassi.
Yes.
So all 3 of those go back, and so their run rate on wages will be probably down next season. But they've got no Champions League, so that's a big hit to the revenue.
Yeah, huge.
So they've got some of the struggles as well in that last season of PSR if PSR does change. But when I talked about, and I know I will have lost people, it's impossible to have all of this conversation without being able to show you some of these documents that I'm referring to, like the extracts from the back of Newcastle's own accounts. If people want to understand it, what I would do is go in the back of the Newcastle accounts. There's this section called Annex G adjustments. Take a picture of it and stick it in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to explain it to you, right? And then you will understand why, what that means going forward for Newcastle's PSR, because I'm sure it will be able to explain it and the adjustments there, or have a look at the article that I wrote on Substack, because again, I try and go through all of these disclosures that try and explain in writing, but it is complicated, and there's no reason why people would be able to.
Was that your June 2nd article, Stefan? You wrote 2 on FFP and PSR. One was on April 25th. The other one was 2nd June.
I'll just have a look.
Well, I posted I shared the link to the June 2nd one in the comments. It shows up on YouTube, but it's not showing up in
I think it might
StreamYard.
I think it might be April.
Oh, I can share that one too. So
I hope everyone who's watching is listening to this and goes away and does it, because I certainly will be.
So have a look at the April 13th one as well.
Okay.
Which explains it explains a bit more about it. It does go into how player trading profit is adjusted and references your accounts, and then explains how we know from your accounts what that means for every other team.
Right.
So that's worth. It's called Explained, the UEFA tariffs that Villa and Chelsea are happy to pay from April 13th.
That's the one I was just looking at. So I'll post the link to that one.
And the clubs at risk, I did one on April 25th, which is the one that was a bit controversial, and then I updated it on June the 2nd. So that's a different one. And then there's also a piece about how Chelsea finally killed PSR on April 5th. If anybody really wants to understand APT, there's a whole explainer there about on April 4th.
Suffice to say, do yourselves a favor, folks, and go and find Stefan's account on Substack and go and subscribe to it. He has got a load of
depends how
information.
deep people want to go on this stuff, right? I appreciate it's, some people think it's really boring and some people think it's too complicated. It's fine it's fine to find it really boring.
There was a comment.
Completely fine. Just don't read earlier. Don't read about PSR. Don't watch anything I'm ever on Talksport. Don't follow me on Twitter.
Leave Stefan alone. Leave Stefan alone.
It's just this weird. We got this weird situation where like people who follow me then come on to say, "Oh, it's all so boring." It's just like, well, I don't care, right? There are lots of people who are interested. If you are interested, read it, follow it, do what you want with it.
If you're not, bugger off.
If you're not interested, that's fine. And there's lots of things I'm not interested in. Like it doesn't matter.
Well,
so
there was a comment earlier in today's discussion where someone said, PSR and FFP, all of those things need to go away because it's making the game boring, because we're losing the entertainment factor, because the clubs are constantly trying to keep up their books, trying to do it. The monitoring of the monetary situation at every club, every season to season, are just, what's the point? We liked it better when everybody could just spend whatever they wanted and buy whatever. And it goes back to Abramovich's Chelsea. It goes back to the Indian guys who bought QPR and then just went on a spending spree that hurt them financially. I mean, you're just looking at it going, everybody just wants to see the player movement. They want to see the games change. They want to see the teams changed.
I think you do have to get the balance right. I don't
Absolutely.
I don't think you have a complete free for all.
Right.
But likewise, I think the real risk is that we create a situation where we self-sabotage.
Yes.
The league being the best league in the world, right?
Right.
So last season was a good hint of what might come. I mean, last season was rubbish, really. I mean, I know it was great for you guys, but it was a very poor product generally. If you think about how difficult it was to find a player of the year, beyond Salah, there was almost no nobody emerged. There was no real stories in the season. Viewing figures were down. And also we opened the door to PSG buying a bunch of players who maybe should have ended up in this league.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe some of them should have ended up at your place.
Yeah.
They didn't even pay that much money for some of those players.
No, I
don't know. It's a bigger debate, for another day. But you got to have some regulation. But look, if people don't want to understand the regulation, that's completely fine, right? But if you do, then I've written some stuff, and some of the stuff's on YouTube and Talksport, and do what you want with it.
Leslie says she can't see the link that I put in. I see it on my YouTube feed
we'll sort that out
for this one. So, but yeah,
we'll drop them in the comments so people can.
They're very dry articles. I have to tell you.
It doesn't matter how dry they are; they're correct. That's the most important
That's
thing.
the point.
The information's there. If people want to read it and understand it more, rather than just having to go with someone who knows what they're talking about.
Exactly,
which would be nice, wouldn't it?
Which is why we're so thankful that Stefan continues to agree to come back and see us.
Yes. I apologize for keep bugging you. It's all Martin.
Once a year is fine. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Maybe twice. But it's all Martin's fault. It's all Martin's fault. He's the one who put me in touch with you.
To have this chat. Anything else before we wrap on this one?
I don't know, Danny, you got one last question?
I do not. I think I speak for all of our fans. We're just excited for this coming season, obviously, with the fixture list that came out very early this morning, USA time in California at 1 a.m. Everybody's looking at those fixtures, looking at which are the most exciting ones. Obviously, for us, the Sunderland ones are, and of course, all of the stateside fans are all looking at what are the possibilities of getting over there and getting to see as many games as we possibly can. But specifically, last season we only had one weekend where there were two games, home games back to back.
Two this time.
I'm looking at. There are so many opportunities, Baz. So
I'll tell you. So talking two things here. So first of all, the big impact of all the stuff we've been discussing is on the size of the playing squad, right? So that's going to be the big challenge. I mean, to have got back in the Champions League is incredible, unbelievable achievement, right? Given the budget and everything else, amazing. But it seems to me from the outside, it was done almost because they had this tight squad of quality. It just isn't going to work in a season where you might have 10. Because of everything we said earlier, you're going to have 10 Champions League games almost certainly before the end of January. Right?
Yeah.
That is a lot.
That is a
lot. Especially with a squad our size.
And that's probably the worst case. Okay. Right. So you've got to deal with that challenge, squad size. And then on top of that, in terms of actually watching games, and again, another Substack, just to promote another Substack I did, which was because so many more games are on Sky, we are virtually now finished with Saturday 3 p.m s.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
So there's almost no way you can have Saturday 3 p.m s, given the way the calendar is and given the number of live games that are now on.
Yeah, and there's 6 teams in the Champions League from the Premier League, so they'll all be Sunday, Monday games, mainly because of that.
Plus 3 other European qualifiers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They've got the Europa League and the Europa
Conference. None of those teams can play Saturday 3 o'clock.
So, Super 6 is going to be difficult.
It's the calendar is going to look very strange this season. Going forward. Yeah. And on top of that, we're going to learn about these fixtures very late in the day as well. It's going to make it a nightmare for people who are travelling in to see these games.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a very, very valid point. That's all you away fan goers. Buckle up, because there's going to be a lot of men.
It's going to be bumpy.
It's going to be bumpy, and a lot of people complaining on Twitter, I can tell you that. Right, again, thank you so much, Stefan, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Guys, please, if you can donate after the show, whenever, all the money is going to cancer research. It'll definitely be £50 minimum. Hopefully it'll be a lot more once we total it all up. So please consider donating to this channel so we can keep doing our bit for charity, which we're over £8,300 so far raised for charity. And we will continue to do that. Stefan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan. Good to see you.
We'll be in touch in January, and we'll see if we can get you back on again.
See you later.
Take care till then, man. Goodbye, everyone. Loved it. Indeed. We're still live. We might as well.
No, we can continue to chat. He speaks so much sense, and it just bugs the crap out of me that there are people out there who, what it comes down to is there are people who don't want to read. They start putting words together and going, this doesn't make any sense to me, and then just and then it's easier to go on Twitter and just blast the guy saying, you don't know what you're saying, or you're boring. No, they're just not digesting the information that he's got out there. So
the problem is what they do is they read titles, they read the first few lines, make assumptions, then have a go without reading the whole thing and soaking it in and understanding what it's all about.
Well, and to be fair, he said it himself. This stuff is dry.
Yeah, it is.
There's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing exciting about it. It's figures, And if maths wasn't your subject in school, it's not going to make much sense. It's just that you're just sitting there going, you're explaining away an Excel spreadsheet. Well, yeah, because that's what it is.
Yeah. It's pretty,
but the fact of the matter is, if you don't look into the business of this stuff and you don't understand the business of this stuff, none of the reasoning behind why a player was signed on this date, what contract did it get, how long is the contract spread out, Chelsea's figured that out. Yeah, Chelsea figured that out because Bowley went out and bought an army of accountants that are all looking at every different permutation in order to skirt the rules.
Yeah. You make a great point. Nobody made a good film about accountancy. The only film that I think that could relate to numbers is Moneyball, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. No, and Billy Beane is a Spurs fan. The Brad Pitt character in the movie, and I only know that because Billy Beane is from the Bay Area. I mean, he's Bay Area based, and he was part of the Earthquakes organization when the Earthquakes entered the league back in 2007. The original Earthquakes franchise that was awarded to MLS as the San Jose Clash, that the ownership and the league moved them to Houston after the 2005 season. So 2006, 2007, Houston won the league back to back in their first 2 seasons in Houston, and that was the San Jose Earthquakes, essentially.
Oh, wow.
But then Lou Wolf, who is a property magnate in the Bay Area, and John Fisher, the owner of the former Oakland A's, who were moving to Las Vegas in 3 years, they brought in Billy Beane because he's a soccer fan, and because of his Moneyball experience. How can we bring a team full of misfits, at on low wages and everything, and get points on the board, and the reason why I bring all of that up is there's a Newcastle connection. In that first season, they brought in Darren Huckerby.
Ah, no way.
Yep. Darren Huckerby played 2 seasons in San Jose, the 2008 and 2009 seasons. He played in San Jose.
Did Paul
Dalglish did play for Houston for a number of years. Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Right, very quickly.
Rayman was good.
Rayman was good as well. Yeah. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, guys. We really want to keep pushing this channel as far as we possibly can. Like I say, we're raising money for charity, and we're doing a pretty good job of that, I think. There is a membership option, which gets you into a prize draw, which I'll need to do this month. Because Diacrow will give us a $40 gift card to give away to one of our lucky members, and you can go onto their website and buy one of their amazing t-shirts. Link is in the description below, and 20% off using code BAZ20, and you can use that code when you get your prize as well. Jan's art is absolutely amazing. You've seen the stuff on the thumbnails of me and Dan. They're absolutely fantastic stuff. Geordie Land experience as well. Anyone who's traveling to the Northeast who wants to learn more about the culture, these are the guys to get in touch with, because they do tours and stuff like that. Our football day charity game, 3rd of August, is sponsored by Henderson Taxis of Stanley. So please, if you're in that area, use the QR code. And this is the reason why, because we are playing a charity football game. We've got Peter Beardsley involved. Peter Beardsley is
going to be on the Through Black and White Eyes 11.
I know, that's just mental, isn't it? Absolutely mental.
You mean Stanley Deaf Club's not going to try and get, hey, you get him for 20 minutes, we get him for 20 minutes.
No, it's not happening. Not happening. And because of the charity day, we're obviously trying to raise as much money as possible. So I have put on a raffle where you can get a Keegan Beardsley Waddle signed shirt, a full squad signed shirt from 2 years ago, Champions League year, some training tops. That is a John Carver training top of the best coach in the world, a coated metal painted Newcastle crest, and there's also a Lewis Miley shirt that's going to be signed. I'm just waiting for that to come back, and I'll take a picture. There's all the prizes there. It's very easy. All you've got to do is drop me a message. It's £1 a ticket. We want to try and sell as many as we can, and the draw will take place on the 4th of August on the channel live. Blade's been a member for 40 months. Wow. Yes, you're wearing one of the Spenny tops, which is amazing. Brilliant discussion. We just need a clever accountant instead of a football. Yeah, we do. We actually do.
Absolutely
this is
true.
The thing.
Yep.
It's what Chelsea are doing.
Hey, maybe I could convince Billy Beane to become, involved in Newcastle instead.
That'd
hey,
be a good
Billy.
idea.
Yeah. News hit late yesterday. It appears that John Fisher, the owner of the San Jose Earthquakes, he's going to pull a Mike Ashley, and he's hired a bank to look at selling the ownership, the responsible ownership aspect of the Earthquakes to a new owner. Which is great for any San Jose Earthquake fan. They're all sitting there going, finally, we're going to be brought in from the desert. We've had a Mike Ashley-esque owner now for the better part of 25 years or 20 years.
Jesus.
So it's all good.
Just to answer that question, the online raffle has started now. If the tickets are available, all you got to do is contact me, and then I'll give you a number, or you can pick your own number. £1 a ticket, a £1 number, and get it done.
If anybody on the channel wants to help share it, hit up Baz and he'll give you the graphic, and we can put it out there.
It's all on Twitter. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere. Join our Facebook page and you'll see it on there as well. Never doubt the PIF when it comes to accountancy. We're seeing a year-on-year increase of 33% revenue. It's very true. There's something not right about calling San Jose.
That's the name of the team and has been since 1974, Blade. So
I love it. In terms of competitive market, that's sort of unheard of. Yeah, I don't know if you watched the show back from this morning. Obviously, I was coughing my lung up. But I did mention the 2 back-to-back home games where you and Jack could potentially come over. But the great thing about next season is obviously there's going to be home Champions League games as well. So technically, we've got 5, 6, 7 potential back-to-back games now for you because of the
I already looking at the fixture list that I put together, I specifically called out September 27th against Arsenal and October 4th against Forest. Yeah. That's the first opportunity.
It was January, wasn't it? Early January.
Well, there's 3 weeks in December. There's December 3rd against Spurs, December 6th against Burnley. There's the away match at the Stadium of Wonderness over on the 13th, and then home again on December 20th against Chelsea. There's 4 matches right there in the span of 14 days, 15 days, 17 days. Then in January, there's January 3rd against Palace and January 7th against Leeds. And then in February, there's February 28th against Everton and March 4th against Man United. And then you start sprinkling in cup games, Champions League games, FA Cup games, and Carabao Cup games. There's all kinds of opportunity. Right. So we are looking at that, and as 2 old retired guys, we're looking at all those opportunities whenever we can. And I don't know if Jack is still on. He was in the comments earlier.
He was in the comments earlier. I think he's gone now. Have Xmas at Baz's house, Dan. More than welcome. I'll put a tent outside for him. He'll be freezing.
Tell Claire we're coming.
Yeah. You see, the thing is, Blade, Dan's been to my house and he knows how small it is, and he knows that there's only 3 bedrooms and there's already all occupied. They can sleep downstairs. The more than welcome.
We'll all go sleep at the Train Museum. It's all good.
Yeah, at the Train Museum is brilliant. Let's all go to Baz's. Hey, you're all welcome for a barbecue, but not at Christmas.
There's sleeper cabins in the Train Museum. We'll go find those. Yeah. It's all good.
I love it. And next year, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing yet, but we are potentially going from, I'm on a 24, and what was it? 24 6.5 contract, which basically means I get 12 yellow days, which is 1 a week.
Yep.
1 a month, sorry. We're going on to potentially 24/6 next year, which means I get 24 yellow days, which means on a Saturday and Sunday night shift will be gone. That means I'll work 1 weekend every month. Yep. I'll be working a 5, 4, and a 3 rather than a 5, 5, and a 4. More time off, more time to do this.
Yep.
More time.
More visiting times. Yep.
Exactly. So convert that off, Baz? No, definitely not. I mean, I live in a metal framed house, man. I don't want to be. It's very difficult to do stuff like that. But yeah, so hopefully, and if this Hungry Bear thing pulls off and I get picked for that as well, things are going to be looking very, very different for next season.
I haven't had a chance to talk to the missus yet about the fixture list, but I did post it up to Jack and Drew and all of the regular US folks that come over.
Yes.
When we're there, I mean, it appears to be a core group of folks. I had no idea Kayla was coming over when we were over in May.
She never messaged,
and that was great to see her as well. So yeah, we'll be looking for those opportunities and trying to get over as often as we can. I'll be over again in early August. Does Baz have a good wine cellar? We could dig one out.
What's a cellar?
What is it? Colin Furs on YouTube, who has his secret bunkers and all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. We'll get him involved, and we'll dig under. It's all good. If the house droops like 6 inches on the corner, it's no big deal.
I'm thinking if we try and dig down anywhere, especially with that big tree I've got in the back garden, we're going to be hitting a lot of roots.
No, there's that. Yeah,
that would be very, very difficult. I think the one thing I took from this show is I don't know if you took the same thing about PSR, is that a lot of clubs are just always teetering close to the line.
Yeah.
Which means clubs like Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, I think, are all right because they always manage to sell loads of big players. But the clubs who want to try and break that big six will never be able to do it because unless they take a massive risk, there's no way they can spend as big as what they need to spend, basically.
Well, for whatever reason, and I we could point at Ashworth, prior to his disastrous turn, in the north, when he was at Brighton, for whatever reason, they were able to find diamonds in the rough.
Yes.
And they had managers who were willing to give them the minutes, get them out on the pitch, who all of a sudden turned into superstars that they were able to sell on. I mean, Casado, no one expected him to be 100 million player when they spent 10 on him, 11, something like that. Yeah. They made tenfold on their money. And I just don't think our fan base is ready for. Forgive me, folks. Just I'm not saying it's a possibility. I'm just speaking hypothetically. But I don't think any of our fan base would be excited about taking a Bruno and saying, look, Barcelona's offering us 150 for Bruno. At 29 years old, 150 for Bruno is stupid money. And how does that 150 set us up for the next 5 years? Same thing. If Liverpool was to, I know.
We know, Simon. We
know. If Liverpool comes in with 100 million for Anthony Gordon, are we stupid if we don't take it? I don't know. But
yeah, I think we're hypothetically saying, Simon, that if that money came in for Bruno, you'd be stupid not to take it, wouldn't you?
Right. Would we be stupid to turn down 100 million for Anthony Gordon right now? I don't know. But those are risks that some clubs are willing to take.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Gordon was having a decent season up until he got that red card, then he got the injury. And everyone's looking at it going, well, Barnes obviously did better. He didn't. They both matched each other when they were actually playing. But Gordon, for me, is, and I was actually, it's quite weird, my postman is a Villa fan. And he got one of his mates to knock on my door, and because he was delivering a parcel, he's just like, he's a Newcastle fan, he does a YouTube channel. And he's like, oh, I'm a Newcastle fan. Shook his hand and everything, had a chat with him. And I had this conversation with him about Gordon and Barnes. I said, what does Barnes do? What's his strengths? He said, well, he cuts inside and scores goals. But he doesn't always score goals, does he?
Real.
What does Gordon offer you? And he says, well, and I said, literally, Gordon goes inside and outside.
Yep.
And he's got a great left foot as well as a right foot.
And he's a foul magnet.
Exactly.
He knows how to sell a foul, especially inside the box.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Exactly.
He's a trickster in that way. Yep.
Yeah. And this is why I said Gordon is potentially the better player if you get him back to his best again, because he offers you more. But I honestly think this will be his season again if he stays.
Yeah.
And if there's no truth in the rumours and all this sort of stuff. If Liverpool came in the Willock's definitely, I mean, come on. But yeah, I'd definitely take 25 million for him from Fulham or Palace if they want to offer it.
Yep.
That would definitely be a deal I would look to do.
That's another one.
I love him.
I do too. But sadly, we have never seen him rise back to the form that he was on when he was on loan during the Bruce era. That saw us spend the 25 million on him.
The season we finished in the Champions League.
Yeah.
Willock was brilliant.
Yep.
That's the Willock I miss. That pass in that Spurs game. Probably the greatest assist I've ever seen at St James's Park, and I've seen a lot of assists. And that pass was just out of this world. but
Yep.
we've never seen. United did it this season. Actually, did try it again, but it didn't pull off. But that cockiness and that, the confidence to say I'm doing this, that seems to have gone, unfortunately.
Yep. Well, I don't think he trusts his body right now. And we thought last season, he had the entire off season to get fit.
Yeah.
And then he came back and he had a setback of some sort.
Twice this season he's been injured, hasn't he?
Exactly. So I mean, for whatever reason, his body is betraying him right now. When he was younger, and I mean, Arsenal fans told us when we spent 25 million on him, we were stupid because because he would be constantly injured. Maybe there was some prescience there, but he did pretty well for us for a bit.
He did.
So
I'm
just excited to see. Here's the thing: would you begrudge him a return to London? I mean, he's a native Londoner. If he wants to go back to London, if Fulham came in or Palace came in, or heaven forbid, Spurs come in for him. Tom, what is Thomas Frank going to do with Spurs? I'm interested to see where he goes. If Mbeumo follows him and goes to Spurs, all of a sudden Spurs become a draw again, but they're going to have to sell in order to buy.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
To answer the question, obviously we got Stefan to answer that question. And basically he said, if we do a deal now, it would make absolutely no difference to PSR because of the amortization and how it works. Selling players, it would. So we're not going to sell anyone until July because
until after July.
After
July
we want
1st.
it on the full books. We could do business now, but again, even if we do business now, we still can't register the player till the 1st of July anyway, because that's the rules. There's the rules are in place that the window opens on the 1st of July again, so that's when players can be registered. I think the one thing we've got to is be patient, and I know it's a hard thing. I've seen loads of people kick off. Getting, look at how slow we're going. We're like snails. There was a 10-day stupid transfer window. And we didn't do any business in it, which does not surprise me. And I wasn't expecting us to do business in those 10 days, to be honest with you.
We just finished the season and half the
everyone's on holiday.
I know that the coaching staff went on holiday on the 26th of May.
Yeah, they were straight out.
Gone. Yep.
Everyone was off and away wherever they wanted to go. Bloody, we spoke to Eddie Howe's, PR person, didn't we? And he was straight off to Greece. So there we go. So expect the first 2 weeks, I think, of July to be busy, and if it's not, then I'm going to start to worry a little bit.
And if Eddie and Steve are in charge of the books, if they're going to be, I meant the books. I mean the transfers. I mean if they're going to be the transfer folks this off season, I think we're in for an exciting time. I'm seriously interested in who Eddie thinks is going to do a job for us in this coming season.
Yeah.
I'm also interested to see which of our fringe players or our young players are going to go out on loan. Because they're going to have to go make a name for themselves, or with so many competing in 4 different fronts, we may see some of those guys stick around because they make our, and they'll get their opportunities in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup.
Yeah,
and I think one to watch this coming season, and I'm predicting it now in June. I think Will Asula is going to have a banger this next season.
Do you know what? He's on fire, isn't he? 3 goals, 3 assists in 3 games for Denmark under 21s. He's proven me wrong at the moment, but I'm not getting excited because it's 21 under 21 level. I'll get excited when I see him do it in the Premier League. I'm interested to see what Sean Neve does.
Agreed. Yep.
I think he's apparently impressed a lot, and he's been in the first team training a lot as well. And he's another young striker potentially.
No one's talking about it, but it's something that we need to also consider. With Dermot leaving the academy, the head coach of the under 18s.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the third head coach of one of our academy teams who have left the academy to go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, which
You
you
know,
can't
he's-
begrudge them, can you?
No, not at all. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I think our academy is doing a fantastic job in identifying talent and bringing talent in to mind our young players. And if those guys are identifying players that they think can do a job in our under 21 squad and in our first team squad, I'd take them at face value.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question. Who would be to blame? Who's in? Do you know what it is? I think the whole fan base will be on the club's back if we don't sign anyone.
Absolutely.
And I think I said that. I think I said that in a tweet recently, or I said it in a conversation somewhere. If Newcastle fail to sign someone for 4 windows in a row, after they've just put the prices up, after they've got everyone to sign up to cup tickets, after they've got everyone to sign up to memberships and renewing season tickets, and the product isn't getting better.
Cup win in 70 years.
Exactly. And the price, and and you're not improving the product, I think everyone in this fan base will be onto the club. And who do you blame? You've got to blame the owners. They're the ones who sanction deals, don't they? They're the ones that put them forward. So I don't blame people individually, but the questions will need to be answered from the club. And whether they will get answered is another question, and they probably won't, because, it's their club really, in a way, isn't it? The custodians of our club, they're the ones who are in charge of it. So, yes, here's another one. Saha has been bigged up well. Corrado scored and assisted on the night, and you'll have to see Sahila. There's Sanusi as well, who signed a contract.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what this young lad does, Kodora.
He's
gone straight out on loan, hasn't he? So we'll see. Eddie's nephew, maybe. Yeah, it's meant to be Andy Howe is in charge, or one of those. Him and Nixon are in charge of scouting, I think it is.
Of identifying the targets.
Not recruitment. They're scouts. So it all depends on who's the person who is meant to get the contract sorted and getting the deals over the line. They're the people to blame, I'm guessing. There we go. I'm not buying a membership until we buy someone. It's a fair shout, really, to be fair. But yeah, right, we'll leave it there because we've been on for quite a while, and I've just really enjoyed listening to Stefan. I know pieces, it's boring and it's all about numbers, but it really is important that people start to learn PSR properly, even though it's about to die by the sounds of things. But there we go. Will he resign because he doesn't? Eddie Howe won't walk away from Newcastle.
I don't think so,
unless he gets the England job. But yeah, that's a different.
And the only person to decide whether or not he's ready to take the England job is Eddie Howe. So
exactly.
There you go. So good to see you, mate.
I'm not sure when we'll be back. We do need to do another transfer show at some point because it's silly season is in full flow and there's been a lot of silly rumours. So we'll work something out, but we don't want to do them so close to each other because then it just looks like we're doing it for the sake of it, and that's not what we're about.
We're not clickbait.
Exactly. So we will get our heads together and we'll decide what the next show is and when the next show will be. But brilliant talking to you as always, Dan. Love you to bits. And thanks to Stefan again. And guys, please, if you can donate to the channel, it's all going towards cancer research as Stefan's chosen charity, which I'll make the donation on Friday once I've got all the numbers from tonight's show. So I appreciate everyone, and we'll see you again very soon. Ta-da.
All right, folks.